Hey, Browns fans, it is a post-game episode of the Dog Check podcast. If I sound happy, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm delirious from a long day down here in Washington covering the game. But obviously not a happy result for the Cleveland Browns today. 34-13, they fall to the Washington Commanders. And I'm here to be a source of hopefully venting and frustrations for you guys, a springboard, if you will, after what was a just awful, really the worst loss of the season for this Cleveland Browns team that is now 1-4 on the season. Feels in a lot of ways that the season might be over. I hate to put that label on it because there are still obviously 12 games to go. There's still room for them to dig themselves out of it. But the margin of error at this point is ultra thin, with 4 losses already on the schedule. And on top of that, you have the bulk, the toughest portions of your schedule still to come. Still all 6 of your division games, which is both a source of, I guess, trouble or difficulty because those teams are tough, but also a source of, I guess, somewhat encouragement because there's still a possibility that you can beat those teams, win your division, give yourself a chance in those regards. But it's all just very bad right now. And I honestly, I've tried to keep spirits up in a lot of ways with this show. I picked the Browns to win this game, obviously late in the week when I did my picks on the later of the week episode. And despite not having any reason to trust this team, and they failed us yet again with the 34-13 loss. And there's no other way to put it at this point. Like this is a bad football team. They're just not good right now, specifically on offense. And I do think while the defense has issues, I think they're compounded by the lack of the offense being able to do much in terms of production, scoring, picking up first downs, having lengthy drives, any of those types of things. They were outgained today. The offense was 434 to 212. They were 1 of 13 on third down, and they didn't get their first third down until late in the fourth quarter with about 7 minutes to go, around that mark, because that was also when they scored their only touchdown of the game to get them to 13 points. They gave up 7 sacks of Deshaun Watson yet again. They were outrushed 215 to 104, and they had 4 more false start penalties among others. There was a sequence at the end of or early in the third quarter after they had caused a turnover, had a chance to score a touchdown and make the game somewhat interesting. And they would have been called for 12 men in the huddle if not for Deshaun Watson basically just conceding to a delay of game penalty instead, because they had just called a timeout a couple plays before. And that sequence was awful. It was like 2 false start penalties in there. They called a timeout. Jerry Jeudy dropped a pass in the end zone that would have been a touchdown. And then they would have been called for this other penalty and then did get called for a delay of game penalty because they weren't going to burn another timeout in that sequence. I know people saw that moment and they were sort of online speculating that Deshaun kind of just walked up the field and quit, which was not what happened. I do want to clarify, like, in fairness to Deshaun, that was not what happened at all. And Kevin Stefanski took the blame for that after the game. But just a terrible sequence. And I think it was kind of a microcosm of this season. Like every time the offense gets anything going or has an opportunity or a turnover puts them on the doorstep, they shoot themselves in the foot just over and over and over again with penalties, with turnovers, with whatever it might be, drop passes. The list goes on and on. And these issues that they continue to say they need to correct just aren't ever really corrected. Deshaun Watson, and he's part of the problem. I'm not trying to sit here and beat around that bush, even though I do try to be fair to Deshaun in some respects. Like last week, I think was resoundingly one of the best games, as Eric and I talked about on the show early in the week last week. That was one of his best games, if not his best game as a pro, or not as a pro, but with the Browns. From first quarter to fourth quarter, I thought he was fantastic. Maybe not fantastic, but I thought he played well, and the players around him let him down. I did not put that loss on him, but today he was again part of the problem. Just not seeing the field well, missing guys that are open when he does have a clean pocket, even though he is under duress quite a bit. There's moments where he isn't, and he still isn't seeing the field right. And so it's the same exact conversations, the same exact things that have plagued him since he's gotten here to Cleveland. And we can't beat around that bush anymore. We can't act like there's not a problem there. There is. I saw a stat before we did the show that his expected points added is minus 0.30, which is the worst mark for a Browns quarterback through the first 5 games of the season since 1999. And you guys know better than anybody, there's been some really bad quarterback play here in Cleveland since 1999, but Deshaun has been the worst through the first 5 games of this season. So just nothing seems to be going right for this offense right now. And like I said, I think the offensive issues are compounding things on defense, like missed tackles and miscues of their own, because they're constantly on the field trying to get the ball back to the offense. And then even when they do, the offense does nothing with it. It's hard as a defense. Like the more opportunities you're out there, like that's more tape that teams have to use against you. That's more opportunities for you to miss a coverage or make a mistake that then turns into to points or a big play for an opponent. It's just a compounding thing, but I really do think it starts with how bad this offense is. And we'll talk a little bit more here in a second about where the Browns can go from here or what options they do have moving forward. Real quick, though, I do want to give a shout out, as always, this show, as are many of the shows here on the Believe Network, brought to you by BetOnline. It's your number one source for everything football. They have all the stats, live odds, spreads, over-unders, and more. Hopefully you guys during the game were over on BetOnline, getting your bets in, doing some things, whether it was the Browns game specifically, which hopefully you didn't bet the over, although maybe the over actually might have hit because the Browns got to 13 late. So you might have been okay if you played the over. But if you played the over specifically just for the Browns score, hopefully you played some other things, parlayed some things together over at BetOnline to win yourself some money, because obviously that did not hit. The other thing about BetOnline is when the game's over, which I'm sure many of you need some therapy after that one, you can play blackjack, poker. They're live slot machines. They're whatever might come to mind. They have a lot of options for you, ways to win money, and we are grateful as always to our friends at BetOnline for their support. BetOnline, the game starts here. So in terms of where the Browns go from here, guys, there aren't a lot of answers. The obvious one is they make a change at quarterback. Kevin Stefanski in his post-game press conference was staunchly against that. He made it very clear they will not be making a quarterback change, and they're sticking with Deshaun Watson. In some respects, they kind of have to. They are stuck with him. They are tied to him. And the only way out, it seems like, is through at this point. And through is continuing to put him out there and hope that he figures it out and that the offense gets its you-know-what together. But it's a tough ask for this team right now because nothing seems to be going right specifically for this offensive group. And I don't know, right now it's fine to sit there and say we're not making a quarterback change, but you're 1-4 on the season. We have seen quarterback controversies in this town for far too long, for far many years. We understand how these things go. The pressure mounts. It's outside noise, sure, and the team can say they're blocking all that out and whatnot. Doesn't matter. It's outside noise. It bears down. Part of the reason we all talked about why they didn't bring Joe Flacco back, and by the way, don't look at his stat line from today, is that there was some worry that the fan base would take more liking to him than they would Deshaun Watson if things went south. And he's not here, but there is a backup quarterback that fans are starting to already claim for in Jameis Winston. And there was a pretty, I thought, a pretty poignant moment when he came in late in the fourth quarter and took over. And what Browns fans were left in the stadium, you heard just kind of this faint cheer from them as Jameis took over the offense, which was, I guess, pretty telling as to how the fan base might feel right now. I mean, you guys tell me. You can comment at the Believe Network's YouTube channel. You can hit me up on Twitter as well at Spencito_. Is that where you're at with this thing? Like, is we're supposed to be a network and a platform for the fans where we can interact with you guys? Are you at the point where it's time to bench Deshaun Watson and do something different? Because that's the sense that I get, and you're already starting to see that mount, whether the organization's at that point or not. But it seems like they're going to keep trying to do this thing with Deshaun at the helm. I just don't know how much longer of a leash they have before they have to change something up, because something isn't registering. And one of the common themes in talking to guys in the locker room, talking to Deshaun at his press conference, talking to Myles Garrett at his press conference after the game, I kept asking everybody, like, what needs to change? Is there anything that needs to change in terms of the messaging, the work you're putting in? And there was this common theme from Joel Petonio, Myles, others, that the week of practice, it feels like things are getting accomplished. And the work they're doing is really, really good. And then for whatever reason, it's just not translating to the field. I don't know what is being lost in translation from practice to the field on Sundays, but it's a problem. And it doesn't seem like anybody really has any answers to it. Myles Garrett was pretty stern and had some pointed comments just about, like, guys got to do their job individually and as a team, and that's that. And I thought Joe Bitonio sort of echoed those sentiments when he talked about, like, at the end of the day, we have 11 guys, they have 11 guys, and we got to win our one-on-one matchups, and that's what it's going to come down to. We got to execute better. It's so old and tiring hearing this team talk about executing better and then not executing better. So something isn't working there. Maybe the quarterback change is the thing, but I also think a lot of this just comes down to the team as a whole playing like guys to the point of Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio. Guys do just flat out have to play better. They like missed tackles is almost like a will thing. You have to be willing to make those plays. You have to be able to make them in space. In a tough situation when you are one on one with a guy. Last year they made those plays. This year they're not. That's one of the biggest differences for the defense this year versus last year. And then offensively, like, same sort of thing applies. Like, if Deshaun does get a guy the ball, he's got to catch it. And Deshaun obviously has to be better. DeJuan Jones, who was a turnstile yet again today, he's got to be able to block and hold up a little bit better off that right side of the offensive line, because it's disrupting the rhythm of Deshaun Watson and what he's able to do. So it's across the board, man. Like, so many individual guys just failing this team right now, and your result is a 1-4 team that isn't very good, and that doesn't have a lot of answers for what the problems are. But I dread and am fearful of what lies ahead for this team. Not that it's nothing we haven't seen before, but I just hated the years where you spent most of the season with the quarterback controversy or talking about the draft or whatever it might be. But that's what we're treading towards. I also thought, speaking of the quarterback's situation too, one thing that sort of stood out to me was it kind of felt like, I mean, Jaden Daniels is phenomenal. That dude accounted, I think he had 82 yards rushing, 230 maybe passing. So he accounted for basically like 300 yards all on his own. And he's a special, special player. And I was reminded watching him play, he's basically what the Browns thought they were getting in Deshaun Watson. They thought they were getting this electric, phenom type player who can run, who can pass, who can do everything. And it's been the opposite. Like, it was almost a weird thing where the Browns were kind of are looking across the field and seeing what they thought they were going to have, and almost like a taste of reality that here's what you could have had, here's what you thought you had, and you've got the complete opposite. Like, it was a very strange, kind of eerie feeling seeing a team that has this great young quarterback who's thriving and doing some good things that the Browns thought they were getting when they signed up for the Deshaun Watson experience, and it's just not there. Like, talk about a look in the mirror or having a look, and like, now you're talking about a quarterback in Deshaun Watson who's not only getting passed by his contemporaries at his veteran level, he's getting passed by rookies, and that's another problem. Like, you're seeing the future of the league now surpassing this guy, and I don't know what the out is. I don't know what the way you get around the Deshaun Watson dilemma is for this team, but it's going to be an albatross here for probably years to come, and at least the rest of this season, because it sure seems like the team is continuing to be committed to him after another frustrating day for this Browns offense. The offensive numbers right now are on par, or in some instances worse, than both the 2016 and 2017 offenses. I believe they're averaging like at least 100 less yards right now than both those teams, the 2016 and 2017 teams that went 1-31. Their third down percentage is worse than both those years as well. The only thing that's better, I think, is maybe their scoring is up by like a point. They're like 15.6, is it 15.6, I think their scoring is right now on average per game. And I think those 2 years it was like 14 or something like that. But guys, this is just dreadful, dreadful stuff in terms of what this offense is doing. It's a problem, and it's probably the worst. It's the worst offense in football. I think even New England, who's struggled, it obviously has some issues of their own as they kind of rebuild. This Browns offense is worse, and the Deshaun Watson experiment has been an utter failure to this point. And they got a lot of soul searching to do as they go into another week with a tougher opponent on the other side in Philadelphia, and more of that to come when you get into your division games and so on and so forth. We know what awaits this team. It's funny. Last thought I have, we were kind of laughing in the press box after this game because somebody made the comment, like, if this continues, the Browns probably won't be featured on Hard Knocks all that much. And my retort was, conversely, if this happens, you could have a very drama-filled team in a couple weeks. And that would make them very much something that they would want to feature on Hard Knocks if you got a quarterback controversy and players who are unhappy and checked out. So, yeah, we're teetering on that type of disastrous scenario that we've seen so many times with this organization. And I just didn't think it was going to happen in this year, the year of our Lord 2024, where you had such a talented team and a coach that seems to have turned around the culture in the organization. For this to be where they're at is shocking, first and foremost, but just, I mean, nobody saw this coming. Even Myles Garrett said he didn't have this on his bingo card after the game. I don't think anybody did. And it's a complete and utter disaster and waste of a season and waste of the talent on this team. And guys, let's face it, like, I don't mean to be doomsday guy, but this offseason there's going to be a lot of potential changes for this team. And you could see the end of some, key players, important players at this organization. It's that's what we're teetering on, though. I mean, at 1-4, that's where we're at. So hopefully they can rebound against the Eagles. It is still a long season. I have retired from picking the Browns for a while to win games. I for some reason, I had a feeling this was good. That today was going to go better, and it did not. But we are here for you to vent at the Dog Check Podcast again, part of the Believe Network of podcasts. Find us on the Believe Network's YouTube channel. You can also hit me up on Twitter at any time at Spencito_. And we also air weekly, of course, on Valley Sports all across Ohio. We'll be back on Tuesday. Eric Metcalf will vent a little bit after this loss. I'm sure he was at home stewing, watching this one like he was last week. We'll get his thoughts on it on Tuesday's episode. And obviously we'll have our late week episode where we make our picks, and which won't be for the Browns. And I take your guys' questions with the mailbag, which, again, you can send your questions. Maybe you just want to get something off your chest even, to dogcheck216@gmail.com, and we'll get your commentary and questions in later in the week. Appreciate you guys as always. Sorry for the result today, guys. But as always, we try to end with a nice, hearty, go Browns.